Welcome back, everyone, to kind of a world-class cast. This is Mike. I'm sitting here with Lance. And today we're going to discuss An Evening with Kevin Von Erich, Stories from the Top Rope, a recent show that Kevin Von Erich did in Dallas. We have the one and only SMU heavyweight, Mr. Lance Peterson, he's a pro's pro when it comes to world class, and he attended the other night, or I guess about a week ago now, the event, now that you're listening to this. So Lance was there. So I told Lance, hey, let's just do a quick little episode on it and tell us your thoughts on it. So Lance, let me welcome you in. How are you? And how'd it go the other night at the show?
Wow. Mike, we talked about it before. We thought, well, some of the questioning might be just, stuff we'd already heard and, how good is it going to be? What's his condition physically and stuff? And I'm going to answer all that right now because, man, I had a million times better time than I thought I would. Half of it was just going to see people I knew because I know a lot of the passionate Von Erich fans. And the place was full. It was great. It was great to see people. And then the show started. There was a little over 1,400 people. And this is at the Majestic Theater in downtown Dallas. You can think of it as a big, fancy movie theater where it was with movie theaters in the late 60s, early 70s. Now you might see a musical, or one time I saw Penn and Teller there, things like that. So, it was a great place to have it. And so it was, it was hosted by Dale Hansen, who was for 35, 40 years, he was the one of the main sports anchors in Dallas. Very outspoken, had his own opinions. Kind of him and Jerry Jones went back and forth. So, pretty outspoken guy. And I was also afraid that he would take it over because, he'd probably talk about wrestling from the 1950s and 60s. And I don't think he was that educated, honestly, on world class. He was here during that time, but probably not paying that much attention. But he did well. So it starts off with this host, Dale Hansen, bringing out David Manning. Now, all along it said special guest David Manning, and I figured, okay, he's going to be there to kind of keep the stories going. So immediately after getting David Manning onto the stage, they're sitting in these chairs, and I posted pictures up on Twitter and stuff. Dale Hansen immediately goes right into asking David Manning about having to tell Fritz about David's death. So we've all heard that story a million times of Fritz was living in East Texas. David had to drive out there middle of the early morning and tell the Fritz that David was dead. He didn't have any information yet, but was going to go back into town and call and try to find out what was going on. So we got that out of the way. Immediately we had to go right into a death story, but I guess that's just part of it. And it probably was the most hard-hitting thing that Dale Hansen had talked to David Manning about. So, he wanted to get that story in. But then it was time to bring out Kevin. And Kevin comes down one of the main aisles of the theater to Stranglehold, classic, coming down the aisle, gets on the stage and basically runs from one side of the stage to the other, sliding, holding his hands up. Just looked incredible shape. Not incredible shape. I'm not going to say that. He's small, very thin. People always comment how thin he is, and he is thin. And but was in didn't have any problems coming down the aisle, going from side to the stage and just looked great. It was it was fantastic. It's what we eat up as passionate Von Erich fans, getting Kevin coming to the stage during Stranglehold. So anything I had speculated about his him, and maybe he's frail, breaking down, he seemed fine. Plus, anything mentally, he was fine. He was there. There was nothing, no problems. Everything was just great. David Manning did keep some of the stories moving, and sometimes they would ask each other, well, you want to tell that story? You want to tell, or you want to tell this story, type of deal. During it, I'm going to get into some of the things said, but Kevin would get up and down to stretch as if he was in his living room, because David Manning would be telling a story and Kevin would just get up. And Dale Hansen had mentioned it early in the show that Kevin was going to get up and stretch during it. So, apparently the back gets really tired sitting down, things like that. And he, gets up and stretches around and, sat back down, and they joked. They took their shoes off at the beginning. Kevin did come to down with whatever shoes on, but him and Dale took their shoes off to do the interview, which it was cute for everybody and stuff. So I'm going to get right into what they talked about. Let's see. First, it was about growing up, having a dad who was hated and all that. They did ask about Fritz being the German, and they kind of wanted to know how Fritz became good and the boys became good. They didn't really get a hardcore into asking where was the specific turn or anything like that. Kevin said talked about getting beat up in school until he was like a sophomore or junior. He was telling lots of stories getting beat up, and then finally he was able to he could take on any bully or anything like that. And of course, no show would be complete if he didn't mention the kicking Buddy Roberts in the mouth deal, which is a true story. He did kick Buddy in the mouth. Mike and I've covered it on our show. It's in the middle of '83. Where it was just 6-man, and Buddy's in the corner, sitting in the corner, having been hit or something, and Kevin runs and just kicks the mess out of him in the mouth and cuts his foot all up. And the rest of the match, you can see the blood running off his foot, and that's the deal where Buddy Roberts sent word that he might need to get that looked at because he didn't brush his teeth very often. So that's that story that Kevin has told consistently since the '80s. Anytime he was on a radio show or something like that. They discussed pulling pranks on Kerry and stuff. Said Kerry was the easiest to pull pranks on. They were talking about being on the road and doing different jokes and things like that, and something about they were going to pull up behind some people and Kerry was going to jump out of a trunk and moon a bunch of people, but instead they did it at a truck stop and people were eating or something, and whatever, however they remember that story. But again, they were just putting over Kerry is so likable, but gullible at that point and stuff. And another joke about putting toilet paper in Mike's shorts in the back as he went to the ring, and that toilet paper and stuff dragging behind him. They did a wild story about BB guns, and Kevin having to admit that they did something bad, hit somebody's windshield or something with a BB gun, but Kerry was still telling his dad that they didn't do it when Kevin had already admitted it, but Kerry was trying to hold it, they hold it together. Kevin briefly touched on losing David and what I think it was a punch to the gut type of deal, which is legit. If you watch any of it, some of it, sometimes, we think Kevin's kind of maybe had an attitude back then, but they were in their 20s. And, if you see whenever he teamed with David, and you can see the matches back in '82 when they win those titles, they you can see the joy Kevin has being with David. It's so incredible. And so, it's easy to see, of course, that was a gut punch and everything. They went into no Von Erich talk is complete without a free bird recognition type of deal. And a couple of quotes as Kevin called Buddy a crash test dummy, which I think is pretty darn fair to say and stuff. He didn't talk about Michael Hayes or anything, whether he's a great worker or not. He said he was friends with Hayes, but he did call Gordy a battleship. Just like at the when the Freebirds went in the Hall of Fame for the WWF back in 2016, and Kevin got up there and spoke about Gordy. You can just see how much he thought of Gordy. And it was really, he's passionate whenever he spoke on him. The emotion of how he felt about Terry Gordy. It's always my favorite part when he did that at the Hall of Fame and just looked into the camera and said, to y'all's family, he was just such a good man. And so I just always love that and stuff. But Kevin also wanted to make sure that, we're talking about the Freebirds, that Gino and Chris were thought of, on that same level of the Birds, that wasn't a drop-off type of deal or anything, that Gino and Chris are thought of like the Birds. And he's really true. And for people that don't listen to our show all the time, the Freebird Von Erich feud was more of a brawling feud, and it was a year and a half, and then the next year and a half was the Gino and Chris feud. Those were your heydays right there, that 80, 45, 86, and it was the Freebirds, and then it was the Gino Chris feud with Kevin and Kerry and Mike. And they just wanted that, as I always say, the Freebirds was a brawling feud. But if you watch the matches with Kevin and Kerry versus Gino and Chris, singles matches are mainly what I'm talking about. Those matches were wrestling matches, and you will look at Kevin and Kerry in a different view as far as workers. You can hear what people write about or people from 30 years ago say about their work rate and whatever when we weren't even paying attention to work rate. But if you watch Kerry and Chris and Gino and Kevin wrestle, they are going to do a bunch of mat work and they're going to look great for that time. Obviously, they're not doing stuff that they do today. Let's keep moving on, okay? they did. They mentioned Kabuki also. How much I think of Kabuki. I just think he's great. Kevin mentioned how he just didn't think much of him. I've heard that story before. He didn't. He just didn't know how they were going to take this guy's legit, this short guy, and he he kicked Kevin in the nose in that match. I don't know if it was a kick. I remember the story, and I've seen the interview after where he's got his nose all busted up, where he got busted hard way by Kabuki and stuff. But Kevin always dished it out, and he could definitely wanted you to give it back at him. He wanted it snug, but he wasn't sure about Kabuki on the same level that he wasn't sure about Bugsy McGraw. And so they mentioned a clown. Roscoe the Clown was on one episode in '82. It was Mickey Grant's producer. Bugsy brought him out and everything or something. Kevin said he was not into that at all. Makes it understandable why Bugsy doesn't say much good about Dallas, because the boys were getting pushed and he was getting pushed out. But hey, it made sense in 1983. He also mentioned that he wasn't sure about Kamala. He thought the Kamala gimmick was just too much. More of a serious, that serious attitude some of those guys had, and that whole thing changed over and stuff at this time. Even though Kamala and more Kabuki. Kabuki's more old school, but he wasn't into Kabuki at first, and then he wasn't into Kamala. But I'm sure once they started making money, they didn't mind. And Mike, I've always said, try to find a one-on-one Kevin versus Kamala match on tape. I hardly see it. I hardly see it booked together on house shows, Kevin and Kamala. It was always Kamala versus Kerry, Brody, Gordy, a one-man gang type of deal. But it was hard to see. I tell you can't find a Kevin versus Kamala match. They did a neat deal towards the end. They did some kind of hard, fast questions, so we get to learn who Kevin is. This is kind of neat. And one of the questions was, what celebrity Kevin would like to meet that he's never met? And he had to think about it. And he said, well, I read Roger Staubach's book, and they said, you never met Roger Staubach. Now, for y'all out of the area, it is quite stunning, because the Von Erichs did do a ton of Easter Seal telethons and fundraisers in the 80s during the heyday. And, Roger had just retired in 79, so he's probably laid low in the 80s, but he's still around. And right now, I can tell you, I've seen Roger out in the wild maybe 3 times in the last 15 years, maybe 4 years ago. He was having lunch next to me over in North Dallas I was eating fried fish at a restaurant, and he was sitting at the table, right there next to me and everything. No, I didn't do a selfie or anything like that. But Roger, it is easy to see Roger. And just considering those telethons, it's even more amazing that they never met at all through the years and stuff. I think right now Roger's probably more visible than any celebrity you want to see around town. I don't know that. He's getting older, but it just seems like I've seen him around, and I'm not seeking him out by any means. All right. One of the things I was really happy I can bring y'all today was he talked about the movie coming up. And the boys, Marshall and Ross, Kevin's sons, who wrestle and everything, and I'm going to see them wrestle in a couple weeks here right outside of Dallas. Both Marshall and Ross and Holly did go to the set where, they said they rebuilt the Sportatorium. And that Holly just couldn't believe the guy was playing Fritz. It really made her emotional. I'm sorry, Holly is Carrie's daughter. Okay, and he talked a lot about her. So it's Lacey's sister, Holly. She's older than Lacey, so she's probably born in 84, 85. Holly, because Lacey's born in 86. And I did get a great picture with Holly that I put up on Twitter. She's very beautiful and does a lot of speaking things now and stuff. I've heard a couple of times where she spoke. I didn't listen to the whole thing, but I see different churches and things like that have her come in. As far as the movie goes, Kevin had no input on the movie. The guy who was making it says that it's a labor of love, so that part he feels good, but he is very concerned, which I knew he would be, about the portrayal of Fritz. And anybody on earth that you come from Kevin's perspective, no one wants to think of their dad as, an overbearing asshole that, we think of him as. And, it's unfortunate because, in ways, Fritz was just trying to do keep the business going in certain ways and doing what he thought was best. Yes, he's a Texas redneck, a hard-nosed son of a gun, but Kevin, of course, doesn't want it portrayed because the way Fritz is portrayed in this movie is going to be the way that the public, not as hardcores because we know too much, but this is going to be how the mass public views Fritz for the rest of time. Oh, that's Fritz Von Erich. You see that movie? There he is. That's how he was. So I can see him being very concerned that his dad's going to be portrayed really bad in the movie, and that's too bad. I even if he was a bad person, whatever you want to say, I blame Fritz for years that I ended up blaming the boys for their problems later on. I don't know what to say. We can all judge whatever we want. No talk of Lance Von Erich at all. Okay, the Israel trips, they did talk about the Israel trips and talked about the Chris Adams story, getting Chris out. Of course. They were asked. They had questions from the fans. I think it was the fans that signed up for the meet and greet early in the day, but they asked about Garvin and Sunshine. They said they had just seen Garvin when they did the Tales from the Territory show. And David Manning says, we all wish we could speak with Sunshine, but she just wants to, lay low and stay out of the spotlight and stuff. So Kevin slowly mentioned somewhere in there where he was talking about Carrie and being, he said Carrie, there's drugs at the end, but other than that, he went into the great guy he was during his life. But he actually did say that drugs at the end, but such a likable guy. And they don't talk like that. You don't hear such bluntness back in the day. I have listened to Marshall and Ross years ago on a podcast discuss Carrie's problems at the end, and one of the daughters, I think it was one of Kevin's daughters, couldn't be around Carrie or ride with him in the car, and they had the same birthday, but he had gone there at the end so bad off and everything. They did. So David Manning, I made a joke about David Manning getting his shit in early in the show because he came out and got to do a little interview for a second before Kevin come on stage. But they did ask Manning about getting hurt. And I guess David had already explained to them about this match because it really wasn't David getting hurt. But Manning did explain, no kayfabe. He said, the planned spot, and that's the hangman spot that he did, that same move that took off Cactus Jack's ear. He did that, I believe it was Labor Day of 85, where he did that move. You'll remember Mark Lawrence got up from commentary. Oh my gosh, that could have killed him and all that. It was really dramatic during that tag team match. Might have been July 4th. Let's see. Could have been July 4th. Von Erich won. No. Gino and Chris won on July 4th. That's right. That's when they got the stip for the hair match. So that must have been when that hangman spot was. But he didn't. He talked about getting ready and if he could do it, but he wasn't really hurt from it or anything. He didn't talk about that. So it kind of went off in that direction. But it was cool that he was kind of not kind of pulling the curtain back about the fact that they asked him if he could do the move and all that and stuff. Anyway. I just thought that the show really satisfied me as far as being there. It was great. It could have been maybe a little longer, but it was fine. The people that paid for the meet and greet got to, Kevin came out early and did that. I didn't do it. I've met Kevin before, and what else am I going to say to him? I got pictures. I've got autographs on my own pictures. So, I didn't go down and meet him, but I was happy, people I know did. And it was a full house, and it couldn't have been better. The next night, he did go to San Antonio and do a show, and that may be it. I believe Corpus Christi was canceled and a few other places in Texas, But this one was a full house. It was crazy how full it was, and almost touching to me. I remember I was in the lobby with some Von Erich fans, really these hardcore people, the Facebook people that have all those Facebook groups. We're right in the middle where people were walking in. I'm like, what do we think we own the place or something because we're such hardcore fans? But I remember looking over and I told a buddy of mine, I said, that's somebody over there by that bar. I don't know who that is. And the guy had a sports coat on and was a heavy set guy. And it come to find out he was sitting across the aisle from me during the show, and it was actually a former teammate of Kevin's that Kevin talked about during the show about a buddy of his being there during the hard times. And they did ask Kevin if he'd ever thought about killing himself, and he said no, that would let the devil win, and I'm not going to let him win. and he really pushed how that he was happy. And it seems like maybe he's compartmentalized. I don't know if that's the right word. I'm a psychology major, but he, has put the death in one spot, but his happy family life he sees over here, and he does. He said all day long, I play with grandkids, and if you've seen his Twitter for the last 20 years while they were in Hawaii, it wasn't quite 20 years, but you saw all the happiness that they did. There, one of the daughters, or maybe one of them, it's one of his daughters, I think, that has kids come and stay, and he was talking about most of them were victims of families where were meth, and stuff, and these kids have been abused or been, they had parents that were screwed up, and they would come and stay with them, and they've done that a bunch, and it was just almost like 100% of them from meth. But again, he pushed how happy he was, and it was just fabulous. I think everybody was really happy with the whole deal, and I'm glad I could share that with you. I hope you can hear it in my voice. I couldn't have been more happy with the show. It was just wonderful.
Yeah, I knew you'd have a good time. And I know you joked during the World Class Cast episodes we were doing. You're like, or at one point, I think you even text me like, I don't know if we're going to get anything new. It's going to be the same stories. But in the end, you said something there. It's 35, 40 plus years later. And to have a crowd like that in Dallas to come see him and David Manning. And yeah, it's something, man. It goes to show you the staying power, because none of us are getting younger. A large portion of the fan base that would have been fans back then is no longer with us. Not just wrestlers no longer with us, but fans are no longer with us. People, like you said, people you used to see at the shows are obviously no longer with us. So to have that stay in power and for so many people to show up, I think that says something, man. It just, it's nice to see in a nutshell, is the best way to say it. It's just nice to see.
The fact that we can go to a show, and I often say this when I see Ross and Marshall wrestle, is we get to relive a little bit through of our good old days through them, and this was cool with him coming to the ring, because how many territorial stars can you do that with? Lawler's the top guy that still goes out there and does it. But the music, it was all about coming out to the music and a rock and roll show and stuff, and they did touch on that, how they wanted it to be a rock and roll deal, and they discussed the music and things like that a little bit. Nothing in depth that memorable, but discussed having it and everything. Because there's people listening that don't hear me all the time discuss my stuff on the Von Erichs or World Class, I'm not going to change anybody's opinion of what they got on things like the heart attack or Fritz being overbearing or this or I'm not going to change your opinion of it. You've had your opinion for a million years. You read the sheets, and what they said is what a lot of people go by. Mike and I have been watching the shows for the last 5 years. I'm pretty hardcore in touch with it for more than 5, for 40 years. And so I give an opinion that, I've sat back and looked at. Yeah, I'm a passionate fan, but I've always been realistic. And what I just wanted to say...
You're very realistic, Lance. That's the one thing I love about you more than anything else with these shows that we review. You grew up a Von Erich fan. You grew up watching this territory. I grew up watching it, although not in Dallas. You are very realistic and honest with everything, whether it's the drugs, the suicide, Fritz. You call it down the middle, and not every fan can do that, because there's a lot of people who, as my friend Adam Price likes to say, they have hero worship where they can't be critical of their heroes. You're not critical. You're just honest in calling what you see, while at the same time being very respectful for these stars that we grew up watching.
Thanks,
and that's hard to do. That is hard to do. Not a lot of people can do that, and you do it better than 95% of the people will ever cross paths with.
I appreciate it. We weren't in these guys' bedrooms. We weren't behind closed doors. I'm not behind closed doors with you, Mike, or anybody else. I'm here in my house, closed doors, my boys, my wife. Nobody knows behind closed doors stuff. You know,
Right.
that's our life. We know what's on TV. We know what two or three of the historians said back in the day. They saw one thing. I thought of an example. I said, what if one of the writers from back in the day had seen one wrestler reading some War and Peace on a plane? He would have said, "Oh, that guy's really into reading." And by the time these 40 years come by, they'll find out, "Whoa, man, was that guy intelligent? He read books upon books." You know, one little thing gets blown out of proportion
Right.
with all these guys and stuff. And I
And it
thought of
becomes
that
a
example.
narrative.
Yeah. I want to say this, and this last preachy thing I'll say on this, Kevin. Remember, all these guys, were in their 20s. All the ECW guys, a lot of them in their 20s, and it's easy to it's easy to pinpoint their faults when we watch it over and over. We know these inside things. Oh, Kevin, he's not doing the job there. He must not have been wanting to do this or that. But remember, they're always in our minds going to be 25 to 30 years old. Okay, we never saw any of these guys get older than that. Yeah, Kevin got older, but hey, he's been out of the spotlight since he was 33, 34 years old. Nobody, we don't know much about him, only what he's put out there in Hawaii and things like that. But we never see these guys develop from 25-year-olds. And man, I can tell you right now, I'm not the same guy I was at 25.
Yeah.
Not at all and stuff. And, people will say, Lance, I went and did that with you, or I went there with you. And I'm like, oh man, and I'm 50, over 50 now, so those guys
Yeah.
are always going to be that same age. They're always going to, they look like 20-year-olds that were partying too much, even if they'd gone on to the rest of their life and stuff like that. So, I just we didn't see him develop. Those guys develop past their TV persona, and that TV persona wasn't. That's just a portion of who those guys were. They were behind the scenes living lives and stuff like that. We don't know those parts of their lives. I never claimed to know any of their inside. Their lives. Only the facts of world class, and I really only like to quote things that I can say. Hey, go look at that episode, you'll see this or that, or look at that program, here's what it says. Somebody questioned the other day about the cage match. I said something about Brody and Abby having the loser escape the cage match, and it was at Christmas '86, and somebody blew up saying they never had an escape the cage match, this, that, or whatever. And I actually went to the program, and in that spot it didn't say escape the cage, so I couldn't prove him wrong there. Like I can on that Tales from the Dark Side, where they said the Kerry Flair cage match was escape the rules, and it definitely on the program
Escape cage,
shows
yeah.
no, it wasn't. But I
Right.
was able to get the video of that match of Abby and Brody and put it on there and say, you can see right here it was escape the rules and stuff. So yeah, out there trying to prove my point, but only with things I can really prove. I'm not going to change anybody's attitudes and stuff. But this was a fun show for Kevin. I always think it's the last time I'm going to see him, because obviously he was in Hawaii. Now they live in northwest Austin, in Bernie, Texas, is where they've all moved. And Bernie is that's where Bruiser Brody's wife was when she got the phone call that something had happened in Puerto Rico. I'm not sure if she knew immediately if he was dead until she made it to the airport or flew over. I'm not sure on that story right now. But she was living in Bernie, and in '88 when he died. And then 10 years later, I go there for in-laws' wedding, and I'm like, I wonder if Bruiser Brody's wife lives here. I'm like, that's all I can think of, because I had heard of Bernie, Texas, which is spelled Boerne or something real weird. Anyway, Mike, I'm really happy that we could do this show, because I was thrilled with the thing last Friday night at the Majestic for Kevin, and I hope everybody will give my world class shows the attention, give them a look, because I put a lot of thought in the shows we've done for the last 5 years. We're about to wrap up '88. We're going to get to the end of the network. We started in '83. And I think we've done some fun stuff. I think some of the ideas we bring up are unique, because they're not just the common thoughts that have been out there for a million years. I try to give you a different viewpoint of things, like the Fritz heart attack angle. One of
Yeah.
those things where I take a different route than everybody else on what my thoughts on it.
No, you actually, for years I called it the heart attack angle, and through our discussions, here's a teaser. If you become a patron, tinyurl.com/patreon/BTT. Lance just pointed out, like, if you watch the telecast, they never say he had a heart attack. He collapsed. There's the words heart attack are never mentioned on world class TV. So it's just a little something. And Lance and I then explore that further and explore how the heart attack narrative came to be, all while at the same time we review every single episode of World Class from 83 through now. We're almost about to finish 1988 because we're wrapping up what's available on the network. So tinyurl.com/patreon/BTT. We've reviewed every single episode of World Class from 83 to 88 almost at this point. And we're going to keep doing some World Class stuff even once we get to the end of 88 because we love doing it and we love just diving into not only the results and what happens in the shows, but Lance has extensive knowledge of the programs from the area, the actual house shows from the time, all of that stuff that he brings to light. Plus, we've reviewed like Lance Von Erich's book, and Lance brings to the table all the other wrestling books he's read and what he's, again, discussed, not proven as fact, but we discussed some of the things that have been mentioned on throughout the years, what some of the sheets have said. And we know those dirt sheets are very popular these days as we record this in September of 2023. But all of that is all available on the World Class Cast at tinyurl.com/patreon/BTT. We've been doing it, like Lance said, over 5 years now, and we're not going to stop. So if you're listening to us for the first time, please give us a chance. I think you'll enjoy it. We are the classy show on the BTT Podcast Network. I'll say that. I'll leave it at that. We're not full of debauchery like me and Hardbody Harper and Doc Turner are all the time. But yeah, Lance, this was awesome. Yeah. I'm glad you were able to attend.
Hey, and you got that one on. You got that one on YouTube where we cover the Texas Stadium episodes, and that's one of the ones I'm really proud of. And if you listen to that, maybe you will consider joining and everything. If you hear the passion that I go through that card with, and stuff. And I was there because I tell you, I was at all those big shows. And if you've never seen my Twitter or X account, at SMU Heavyweight, Lance Peterson at SMU Heavyweight, you will see. You go down the rabbit hole and lose track of time studying all my memorabilia through the years because, I've put it all up there since 2011. I am on Facebook in these groups, but I don't put much out. I'm really all about, X or Twitter. All right, Mike. Thanks a lot.
No problem, man. This was great. I'm glad you got to attend. And hey, I didn't know how many minutes we do here, but we're 30 plus minutes into this. So this was great. Very enlightening. I just was sitting back. I put myself on mute and was just listening to everything you said. It was phenomenal. So I was a listener too as we went through this, but really good stuff. So we're going to get out of here. We're going to go do our September 10th and 17th of 1988 World Class shows now, the reviews that we do for our normal bi-weekly patrons. On that note, I'll just hit the tagline, book it.